think really looking forward to a great discussion today. We have an excellent group of individuals and leaders in their own right, both in their communities and the cities and states and countries they serve, and companies with my colleague. Want to go around the room, introduce myself and the great group of folks we're going to get to speak with today and share some of their thoughts around the issues facing us both as countries and cities and how we serve our communities and businesses. My name is Alex Nigelo. I'm the Senior Vice President for Cybersecurity Coordination and Advocacy at MasterCard.
Hi, I'm David Graham. I am the Chief Innovation Officer for the City of Carlsbad, and I co-chair our Regional Smart Cities Alliance.
He's my brother from another mother. I'm from Oceanside, he's from Carlsbad.
Right.
Those are neighboring cities. My name is Clayton Banks. I am the CEO of Silicon Harlem. I operate out of Harlem in New York City. Our whole objective and our belief is that everyone deserves a connection and everything will be connected. So therefore, we have to create an infrastructure that's going to support all of that while at the same time bringing parity to all zip codes. Hello? Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So we gave him the mic.
Yeah. I think it was a wise decision.
My grandfather was a preacher, so whenever I get a mic, I'm ready to
Then
go.
preach.
So Simon Hunt, also MasterCard. My job is to stop the criminals getting rich. So I'm entirely focused on that. I run our fraud, our standards, and our cybersecurity groups, not protecting MasterCard, but protecting our networks and our customers.
My name is Marijn Franje. I'm the Chief Information Officer of the City of The Hague. Yeah, my main job is to divide digital inclusion for everybody in the municipality and City of The Hague.
My name is Jean Holm. I'm the Deputy CIO for the City of Los Angeles, so we have a big California contingent here. I've only been at the city a few years. Before that, I was with the World Bank in Central Africa and with the Obama administration, the White House.
Makes two of us. Good team. So look, what we wanted to talk a little bit about is, obviously we're at the Central Forum around smart cities, but I think it's easy to get lost in the discussion around emerging technologies singularly as a point of excitement, which it decidedly is, and the power is there. But I think one of the most important things that weaves this thread of the group beyond California and the Obama administration together, both things that are great, I think, is around the challenges and the partnerships that we bring together both as companies and as cities and as leaders in that space, and how at the end of the day there's one core focus, is serving the communities and citizens with the responsible, meaningful, citizen-facing services that empower us as people to live our lives safely and do better. I want to let each of the panel members go around just for a minute or so, given the breadth of experiences they have, and both geographically and technologically, and the roles they have, and speak to one or two of the top emerging issues they're seeing, particularly on how they serve their citizens with smart city capable technologies, but also how they see cybersecurity as an area of focus.
So thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. It's really interesting that we're talking about a hyper-technical issue with regards to cybersecurity, one that we all know is incredibly challenging for us, but one that is also sort of like a mysterious black box, right? We kind of leave it to the cyber warriors in our companies to go fight that fight, but what do the community really understand about that? At the same time, it's directly connected to one of the most important things in this entire space, which is privacy and credibility and trust. And if we can't marry those two things up with our communities, then everything you see here on the show floor and that's being discussed here will fall apart because we haven't built trust with our communities. And so one of the most important things that I see that we need to do is begin that conversation with those that are not initiated, those who are not technical, and talk about what that base level of trust is around adopting these new technologies and how that plays into protecting their privacy associated with everything that we're deploying here. Because if we can't have that conversation and be honest about the fact that we will get breached, there will be things that are exposed, but it's about how we recover from that. If we can't have that honest conversation with our communities, then frankly we're going to see the same sorts of disasters and explosion in trust that we've unfortunately seen in a number of our cities around the United States when a major cyber event happens.
Well said.
I guess I'll go. So I work in Harlem, and I love it. I mean, I absolutely love Harlem because when you look at the infrastructure of Harlem, It is the most accessible area of Manhattan. 6 bridges come into Harlem. 4 or 5 of them are free. So a lot of people come through Harlem just to get downtown or midtown. And I'm saying that because when you start to break down the question, you really want to look at it from the citizen's perspective. What is a single mother that has to get their kids to school and get to a job? What does that look like from a mobility perspective? In New York, we also have an issue with garbage. We have an issue with rats. We have an issue with noise. So when we start talking about the infrastructure of our community, we start sort of from the inside out. The idea of technology, cybersecurity, all these things are sort of the applications and services that need to go into the community. But what we really want to do is figure out what's happening in the community and come out and make sure we start to prioritize those things that are going to solve these systemic problems that have gone on. I went to a mayor's town hall 20 years ago, and the top issues in that 500 people were noise, rats, garbage, and traffic. 20 years later with de Blasio, I went to a town hall. What did I hear? Exact same things. So the government's not able to solve it all. It's going to have to involve the private sector, involve the academics, involve the stakeholders in the community. And the point is that I did a workshop through the Global Cyber Alliance, if you will, the Cybersecurity Alliance. It's a global GCA movement that created a toolkit. But I, for the prior 4 or 5 years, have poured in digital literacy into the community. Because they can't get to these things if they don't have like some level of literacy around a computer or around online and things of that nature. And you heard some statistics earlier where there's people that don't have broadband in the home. We all do, and we all sort of like think everybody does. But in Harlem, 40% don't have it. In East Harlem, it's 50%. That means their literacy around this idea of cybersecurity or any other technology is very low. Even in this audience, if I ask you what is your broadband up and down speed, some of you won't know. Some of you are geeky enough to know. But either way, you're still paying for it. And I'm saying all that because there's fundamentals to your question. The fundamentals. It's great to talk about this really like hot topic of cybersecurity because it affects all of us. But boy, from my perspective, working in a community, and like I said, my community is very large, 700,000. It's as big as Atlanta or Miami. It's like I have a city inside of a city. And to be able to understand what's happening inside out has been very beneficial to how we can deploy these type of services, this type of education, to make it sustainable, right? To actually really critically build social advancement as well as economic development.
That's great.
Good answer.
Thank you very much. I'm leaving.
Okay. So you asked what concerns me. In the city view, what concerns me is the lack of foundational cybersecurity knowledge that we have in our communities. And what inspires me is the trust that cities have with their constituents, with the businesses in their city. It's much more likely that a business will talk to their city, their mayor about cybersecurity than they'll talk to a vendor or even MasterCard. So what I'm interested in is developing this foundational knowledge, getting people to understand that cyber criminals aren't geniuses, they're not amazing godlike personas, they're just a little less lazy than we are. And getting people to start talking about that and working with their cities in particular to communicate with each other, to help each other, and to feed that cycle of virtuous education. That's where I'm most worried at the moment. I look at big companies and they have access to talent, access to product, they're rich so they can afford to buy people. This story that there's not enough cybersecurity people, I would counter as there's plenty of us, we're just really expensive. But big companies can afford to do it right, and they can afford to make good risk decisions. Small companies don't know what they don't know, and in partnership with cities and mayors and Clayton, your kind of organization, we can bring that education and help uplift them. And all it takes to win in cybersecurity is just not be the slowest rabbit. The criminals are lazy, they will go and attack somebody else if you're a little bit harder. To give you an analogy, all you need to secure your house is the sign in your garden saying you have an alarm. And then when everybody has the sign, then you need the alarm. But if you're the only one in the street with the alarm sign, the criminal's going to go elsewhere. And the same is true of cybersecurity. If you're a little bit harder than everybody else, they won't waste their time.
I think for me the main challenge is enabling the citizens to really play a role themselves in a digital world and basically help to co-create the solutions for the problems that we're facing as a city. And it means, one side's already mentioned education. So I mean, if you want people to participate, they need to know how to handle in the digital world. And the second one is definitely accessibility. Then you need to give them the tools as well to be able to help co-create solutions for the challenges. And I think that brings me to the last bit of it. I think a lot of municipalities still didn't realize yet that the way that we are constructed and working now is basically the setting for the last century and not for this century. So we're too small, we don't have the knowledge on ourselves to solve our problems, and we definitely need our citizens or companies to solve those different issues. For example, the program that we're having in The Hague is that we use students to help small businesses to protect themselves. Yeah. So basically the students, as part of the education, they go to a small company, most times 1 or 2 people, and they basically do a check from, okay, how's your cybersecurity, what kind of measures can you take? And it's a very low level way. The students get experience in practice, and somebody with a small business is helped with somebody that has knowledge, and those two are put together. And I think we have to cross the bridge to go to these kind of collaborations to really get a step further ahead.
Like everybody else, we agree that cybersecurity starts young. And so we have a Cyber Patriots program in the US. LA has won the last 2 years, so I'm just very proud of that. We start as young as 3rd grade teaching kids cyber safety online, and then we take that all the way up to cyber competitions in high school. We then award every graduating senior in LA Unified School District. We have 650,000 students. Every graduating senior gets 2 free years of community college. And as part of that, we give away computer Wi-Fi hotspots and computers. We have digital literacy programs in our libraries throughout the city. And we provide a data science federation that helps young college students get a chance to actually work in city government on city problems as part of their resume building. We do a variety of outreach and funding to underserved communities as well. Like Harlem, we have 50% of some of our communities are not online at home, and yet we require a lot of those students to provide online homework. So all the way through, we want to make sure that not only are they getting digital literacy, but they're getting the security skills to do transactions safely online and to be able to get online safely and affordably. And then finally, we cap it off with the LA Cyber Lab, which works and connects 500 small and medium businesses with cybersecurity professionals at the city and around this community so that we can help them transact things safely online. We really think that cybersecurity is part of a whole smart city ecosystem, part of what we do with open data, with an Internet of Things, with connectivity, and we really want to make sure that everybody in the community is connected.
I think David led in with this, but it's, again, a theme that has woven throughout the word trust. I think there's a core component of what cities have a responsibility for, what companies increasingly in the partnerships are recognizing, some I think earlier than others, in the role that they play, both in managing individuals' information and how they serve their broader communities. But that trust component I think is a central piece. And how I think there's such an interesting thread to pull out a little bit about the underserved communities and what that may look like and mean, whether that means individuals or it may mean businesses that are under-resourced, as Jean was speaking about, and Clayton a moment ago, and Simon on small and medium businesses. Maybe David, talk a little bit about the ways in which you see the responsibilities of governments in managing this robust set of information and what that looks like and done well. And
So we talk a lot about data and all the data that people have, and then people are concerned about their personal data, personally identifiable information. And we have this huge discussion, but we don't really recognize the fact that for most organizations around the world, we only analyze about 12% of the data we actually generate. 88% of that data just goes poof, unanalyzed, unused. And when we think about the fact that there is so much, honestly, as a city, when somebody comes to me and says, we're going to give you all this amazing data, I'm like, I really don't care. I honestly don't care. What I care about is solving issues like food insecurity in underserved neighborhoods. I care about solving mobility issues. I care about upskilling folks so that they can move into the digital and innovation economy. That's what I care about. And I think when we start with the challenge first and the technology and data second, that's the real approach that builds that community trust and interest. And so I think we need to kind of turn a lot of this on its head and begin to say, what does that more inclusive community look like, right? What does the Harlem of 10 years from now look like that solved the rat issues and traffic issues, et cetera, right? And let's go there first and join in these partnerships between industry, academia, and community members to solve those issues and problems. And I think with that sort of heart, inclusiveness will be the thread that runs through everything that you end up doing in the sort of digital and innovation and cybersecurity space.
And let me build on that. So I think every community, whether you're high income or low income, needs to be prepared for the 21st century and perhaps even moving towards the 22nd century.
Yeah.
We're sort of in the fourth industrial revolution right now, which is defined by being virtual and, if you will, autonomous. So we all have to get ready for that type of living. And we have a great opportunity because all of that is vulnerable for hacking, by the way. But we have this great opportunity, I think, to make it a little bit more fair as we move towards advanced technology. So I want you to think about this. Maddie knows this because her and I talked about it in Atlanta. There are 5 components you need for every community in this nation. 5 components. Some of you might want to type it in your phone or write it down. We've already talked about you want the private sector at the table. We've talked about the public sector at the table. I'm going to give you 3 more. You're going to want the stakeholders in your community, the hospitals, the churches, the YMCAs, those who are touching your fellow citizen every single day. Number 4, you're going to want to have, of course, the academics. Did I mention that already?
Nope.
The academics have to be at the table because they are doing the advanced research and test bedding in your community. We've actually created what we call Community as a Platform in Harlem, which has attracted over $50 million in advanced research and technology right now.
Talk about that a little bit. What's community as a platform?
The Community as a Platform says to that ecosystem, hey, if you're going to try something out, why don't you try it in Uptown? Because we've seen over the years, especially around technology, that all testing, all new research ideas are happening downtown or in Midtown where there's a lot less low-income housing. Harlem has the most low-income housing than any other part of Manhattan. So you need that type of audience, if you will, when you're testing things because those are the people that are going to need it the most. So we want to make sure we're getting it right. We did this with a 5G trial right now through the National Science Foundation. We're one of 2 test beds in the entire country. It's happening in Harlem. It's unprecedented, never been done before. And the 5th item is the citizen. Sit in the middle is you. You who are at this conference, learning all this stuff, should sit in the middle of that wheel and start to make the interpretation that needs to happen between the public sector and the private sector, between the academic and the stakeholder. You need to, there's got to be a leader in your community, a leadership in your community that will make that happen. And this will advance the digital literacy. This will advance job opportunities. This will bring parity into your zip codes around your entire city and those communities. This is sustainable, but someone in your community has to step up. That's what we do as Silicon Harlem. We sit in that middle, we create that ecosystem, and as a result, we're able to attract that money, we're able to attract jobs. We just got, there's 50 WeWorks in downtown New York City, 0 uptown. We finally got our first WeWork in 2016. Now, it's not the best topic to talk about anymore, but at the time it was really hot that we got one in Harlem. That created a whole new boom of startups in our community. It made all the restaurants get more money. It made the haircut people get more money. I mean, this one tech job can create 5 additional jobs. That's not just me. You can look it up. Accenture, all these companies do these reports. So that's why, to your point, that I think, you know, when you're going to move your community, and as David said, you got to have those voices, but more importantly, create something that's sustainable. programs and initiatives and that kind of bullshit, it gets over. Do something that's sustainable, and that's how you get there.
So, Gene, I want to come over to you a little bit. You and I were both in the federal government previously, and when we often talk about cybersecurity and the roles of governments, it's often about the federal government and responses that occur. You're in a uniquely different role within the city of Los Angeles. How do you think about the role of cities and the capabilities and authorities they have to particularly serve and respond to? We see growing issues around ransomware. We see the impact that it's having both on city services, but also more broadly, the impact on economic revenue, which is the lifeblood, particularly small and medium businesses, of our communities. How do you think about the roles of cities in dealing with these issues and the capabilities?
Well, I think cities have a unique perspective on what local businesses are struggling with in cybersecurity, and it's different at the federal level. At the federal level, there are sort of sweeping policies and regulations that may or may not be supportive of local businesses, but the city government has a special relationship because they're right there in the community and they need to be business friendly. The city government needs to be business friendly. That's how LA became the first 5G city on the planet, was by being business friendly to the telecom companies. In that same way, we need to help the local businesses, and the LA Cyber Lab does this, where we saw ransomware attacks against different companies. We saw intrusions into a lot of the companies in Hollywood, which is part of LA. And so what we did is created the Cyber Lab that looks at all of the different local trends, the security hacks, the issues going on, and helps in an understandable way give support to all of the businesses so that they can be cyber safe. I think it's nice for a city government to do that because locally they see regional things that are happening. They also see regional issues. For example, in LA, 2/3 of our businesses are started by immigrants, which is amazing. They're the backbone of our economy, but they also have unique issues in trying to understand cybersecurity that may be different in Los Angeles than maybe where they've immigrated from. So I think it's really important for city governments to step forward in creative and sustainable ways that reach across the digital divide, not just for individuals, but for businesses as well.
It's really interesting. On the immigration side, I think that it's an overlooked element. We talk about things like digital identity. The world that we're moving into is so decidedly digital. Thinking about, as people continue to move online, enabling individuals to have true identities, whether you're in your own country or where you immigrate to, there's a power in that, and I think a greater need.
Right, and I just want to add to that that in that same realm of security, it's also the idea of data literacy is important. So we're creating a digital bill of rights for what people living and working in Los Angeles can expect of the data being gathered about them, and then a code of ethics for our developers and our partners on what we expect people to understand about inferred bias and implied and unintended consequences.
How about to Margine a little bit over the Hague from a similar question on the city side, but a different regional perspective. Some of the experiments you're working on and
First, I want to tap into the thing what has been said before. I think one of the keys to try to advance yourself as cybersecurity as a city as a whole is to test yourself. So 3 years ago, we decided, okay, if we are trying to fight hackers, you have to invite them in. So we asked 30 hackers to come down in a town hall and basically say, okay, for one day, you can try to breach your systems. And the one that does, the one that has the best hack, gets 3,000 euros. Second one, 1,500 euros. The third one, 500 euros. We did it the first year. Year after, 50 hackers. This year, 100.
100.
And we included vendors as well. So at the second edition, we asked, okay, do some of our vendors, are they interested to join? And this year we had 15 vendors, including a couple global. And then the funny thing is that you notice those hackers in the end are so good that they even manage to breach sometimes the global vendors in some way that they would have never imagined before. And that's making use of the knowledge because those hackers are students, are professional, basically geeks that are working all the time or working in the IT sector, and they take their time for a whole day basically to try to help the cybersecurity defense of a city as a whole and basically uplift it in another way. And that's the thing I think we should strive for. Really test ourselves in a more broader way in these kind of events. Not put our heads in the ground, but face it up front, because then you can act on it. And if you ask me, okay, what is then the end of such kind of thing, then I think, okay, I would like to have the energy company included. The telecom companies actually asked one. They said, no way.
No.
No way. No, because if we get hacked or anything, no, then we have bad press. But I think you should see it as a challenge and a way of forward thinking instead of being defensive and trying to ignore what is happening in your world, because everybody will get breached one way or another. So you have to make use of the assets that you have in your city. Another project that we're doing, part of the redevelopment of the coastal area, we integrated digital infrastructure. And basically not to do experiments ourselves, we basically said, okay, we went around the neighborhood talking with the citizens, with the companies, and said, okay, if we have a digital infrastructure in place, what kind of problems do you have that you would solve with digital solutions? We got first a rough list of 300 different initiatives. We digged it down to 150. We actually have the first bit in place, and we're not going to do those experiments ourselves, but basically groups of citizens are doing it. It's a coastal area where you have residents, you have a lot of beach bars, so a lot of noise pollution, with the people living there don't like.
Maybe some
You have
rats.
a nature area, you have tourists, you have traffic problems. And the funny thing is then, at a certain moment, you really get down to the issues that are living. So the people of the owners of the beach bars, they always were fighting with the citizens. So they proposed the idea, okay, if we can put sensors, the sensors is going to determine at certain moments if the noise level is too high or not. And the results are going at the same time to the citizens, at the same time to the beach bars, at the same time to the municipality, to really make it transparent if there's really something or not, who's right or not. And it's those kind of experiments. We have the same on congestion. We do nature counting of birds in the area. We have a small company that has a cleaning robot for the beach, picking up the cigarettes. They're going to test it out. So it's a combination of different kind of innovations that are suited for that kind of area. We're going to basically broaden that approach to different parts of the area. But each time we really look down, for example, we have a central area, we're going to do the same. There we have a big question about increasing of residents. So we're going to build more houses over there. It's going to put pressure on congestion. And that's different kind of topics and different kind of team trying to really dig down to the issues in that area. In combination, what can digital means and innovation bring to help solve those kind of issues?
So
And the funny thing is, municipality, we take a step back. So we're not putting the solutions on the table. We say, okay, we call it the urban operator role. We facilitate that everybody can make use of it. It's transparent what's going to be there.
Yeah.
People can follow it, and it's accountable why somebody is allowed or isn't. And we ask from all those initiatives that the data that's generated has to be published back open, except for privacy and financial sensitive data. So we asked them to put something back as well.
Have you loaded that up on City Possible?
Huh?
Have you loaded up that on City
No,
Possible?
not yet.
You got to share that, man.
That's a promise I will.
Good. Hold them to it. Simon, I think,
Is that me?
I don't know.
Yep.
Our time's not up, thankfully. But we talked about cities a lot. How about the role of the private sector? I think MasterCard uniquely situated in your perspective and exposure. We're in how many? 209,
9 countries.
probably 12 in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Countries around the world. And the role of a network, but also as I think the power of the freedom of the experiment, the test bed place. How do you see both the role of broader standards in raising the overall water, but also give that liberty for that experimentation? There's sometimes a tension.
Yeah, so standards are very powerful in that they bring everyone up a level, and the reason everyone here's credit card works everywhere in the world is because of standards. Otherwise, we would have 50 different ways of using credit card transactions. The World Wide Web is a standard, which is the way we all get to stuff. The PC is a standard. So PCI and the foundations of cybersecurity kind of bring things up, and a lot of the stuff that we do on MasterCard is evaluating those standards against the latest and greatest hacking and criminal strategies and working out, is the standard still sufficient? So, every day my team is twisting cards, trying to pull the chips off them, trying to get into the chips. We're trying to work out, is the standard that we manufacture things to globally sufficient? So that's where someone like a network really pays into the system. We're not trying to sell people cards. We don't sell cards. We don't sell point-of-sale machines. But if we can help them work more effectively, the world is a little better. And you know, we win because people use their card more. You know, and we're not.
It's
we're not
okay to win and make
disinge-
money when
Yeah,
you're doing good.
yeah,
I
when
learned
you
that
do- yeah,
a long
exactly.
time ago.
And in terms of cybersecurity, as I started with, every time somebody fails at cybersecurity, some criminal gets rich. 60% of the money they earn, which is $1.5 trillion a year, goes into further hedonistic spending and crime. So every time a city pays a ransom, that puts methamphetamines on the street somewhere else and pays for the next attack against the next city. So that's why we are passionate about stopping it, because I live in a city. Yeah, I don't want that stuff happening around me. So unlike cybersecurity vendors, MasterCard can use its influence to make people be better. You know, we don't sell anti-malware, but we can encourage people to use it because it stops people stealing stuff. And if you really want another reason why it's important, just remember that all those thefts are absorbed into the prices of the goods and services we consume as citizens. Yeah? Businesses load their prices to balance out the thefts that they are subject to. So every time a criminal wins, we lose as people. So that's why I'm here, to solve that problem.
That's excellent. So let me end on, I think, hopefully a positive note. But thank God we have Simon on this work. But, you know, in the environment we're in, we're walking past all these amazing technologies. I think David kicked it off, and hearing what Clayton and Jean and Margine and Simon just spoke to, there is one thing that is important, is maybe pulling back from the smart cities, and the technology piece is, again, the communities and people that we serve, both as businesses and as governments. There's a power in that. As a guy who loves technology, gets to play around with it, and sees it as a great enabler, it's also meant to be human. Don't forget the human in this and what we're doing. And I'm proud of the panel.
Can I tell you to use that term more often? I don't use smart. Hello? Everybody hear me? I don't use smart. People in Harlem are already smart. It's tech-enabled. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're striving for. I see smart all over the Brook floor. That's cool. It's good marketing. But it's tech-enabled. People are already smart. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you. It's great. So we invite folks. We're going to have a continued... you can drop the mic. Great conversation just now. I want to thank our panelists for their insights and invite folks if they want to continue some of the conversation next door. Thank you.
Thank you all.